Tonight, we're following a number of developing stories. The U.S. government announces a crackdown on a new Russian election influence campaign. Why the Attorney General calls the misinformation a bigger threat than ever before.
It's coming faster and faster. It's now AI-fueled.
Plus, the breaking news, a mass shooting at a high school as a new school year gets underway.
I heard like 12, 15 different gunshots. It was like boom, boom.
I was crying. I was scared I was gonna die.
A 14-year-old tonight is in custody to be charged with the murders of 2 classmates and 2 teachers. The new details just coming in. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We're going to begin tonight with a distinctly American tragedy, a mass shooting at a school, this time at a high school in Georgia. It started around 10:23 this morning when police say a teenage gunman opened fire at Appalachia High School. That's about 45 miles northeast of Atlanta. 4 people are dead, 9 others wounded. Students and teachers scrambled to take cover as witnesses described gunshots and blood. One teen texted, "I love you," to his parents. And families rushed towards the school in search of their kids. Nearby streets littered with abandoned cars as mothers and fathers described running miles to reach their children. President Biden said, quote, "We cannot continue to accept this as normal." CBS's Mark Strassman is on the scene. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Nora. When Appalachia High went into lockdown this morning, at first, many students thought it was a drill. And then they heard gunshots.
Winder, Georgia's moment of dread. An active shooter rampaging through Appalachia High School.
He started shooting like 10 times. He shot at least 10 times. I had saw one of my classmates on the ground bleeding so bad.
Hurry up now, come on, let's go.
Inside the school, gunshots, panic.
When did you first realize it was real?
And I was in chemistry, and we heard loud banging, and then we heard screaming. As soon as we heard screaming, I was like, oh, this is for real.
And carnage. 4 people killed, 2 teachers and 2 students. 9 others were injured.
I never imagined that I would be speaking to the media in my career over something that happened today, the pure evil that happened today.
School officials guided roughly 1,900 students to the football field. SWAT teams went classroom to classroom. Sophomore Melanie Alvarez.
What was going through your mind?
I was scared because I didn't know if my mom was informed. I was crying. I was scared I was gonna die.
Were other kids doing the same thing?
Yeah, all of us were crying.
The alleged shooter, now in custody, identified as 14-year-old Colt Gray.
And our school resource officer engaged him, and the shooter quickly realized that if he did not give up, that it would end with an OIS, an officer-involved shooting.
Hundreds of parents raced from around Metro Atlanta to the school.
I was completely in shock, didn't know if I was going to be able to get here and be able to see my daughter alive.
The sheriff says the alleged shooter, a freshman here, is cooperating, but the motive unclear. Nora, this school will be closed the rest of the week.
Mark Strassman, thank you very much. The tragedy in Georgia became a topic on the campaign trail today. Vice President Kamala Harris, who supports stronger gun control measures, spoke about the shooting.
And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all. You know, it doesn't have to be this way.
For his part, former President Donald Trump wrote on social media, quote, "Our hearts are with the victims and loved ones of those affected by this tragic event." Tonight, the Biden administration is cracking down on Russia's attempt to influence the 2024 election, with the Department of Justice, the Treasury, and the State Departments all announcing a series of actions, including criminal charges and sanctions. Attorney General Merrick Garland says a state-controlled media outlet is behind a $10 million plot to spread disinformation to garner support for Trump. CBS's Scott McFarland has more from the Justice Department.
Just 2 months before Election Day, the Department of Justice accused Russia of an elaborate, sophisticated propaganda campaign to sway voters. 2 Russian officials with state-controlled RT are charged as part of an alleged scheme to work with a Tennessee company to publish stories favorable to Russia, to splinter Americans and dampen support for Ukraine. Both officials remain at large overseas.
The American people were informed when a foreign power engages in political activities or seeks to influence public discourse.
The feds also seized 32 internet domains believed to be tools of Russia's disinformation campaign, directed by Vladimir Putin's administration, with a playbook to push polarizing issues, including inflation, job loss for white Americans, privileges for people of color, threats of crime from people of color, and to target an audience of lower and middle class white Americans as supporters of candidate A. Though the court filings don't explicitly identify candidate A, the Attorney General indicated Russia wanted to bolster support for Trump.
Russia's preferences have not changed from the preceding election.
The Department of Justice says Russia pushed out phony news reports to trick readers and viewers into thinking they were reading real articles from the Washington Post or Fox News, but they were not.
Show me your legal authority or get out.
The propagandists targeted social media influencers who have massive followings to spread this misinformation far and wide. Some articles and videos secured millions of views, including on YouTube.
Russia has used the past several years to refine their tactics, to enhance their impact, and identify new ways to reach an American audience to sway the election.
The FBI director warned other nations not to try the same.
Knock it off.
In a statement tonight, the Russian state media company RT responded to this, accusing the Department of Justice of scaremongering. Nora?
Scott McFarland, thank you. Tonight, Israel is still reeling from the recent killings of those 6 hostages, including an American who survived for nearly 330 days in captivity before their bodies were found last weekend. Their deaths have sparked a new wave of protests inside Israel, with many hoping it might be a turning point in negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release. Well, today, CBS's Elizabeth Palmer asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the criticism he's facing.
These protests carry a clear message to one man, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Do a deal with Hamas and bring the hostages home. Is he feeling the pressure? If so, it didn't show tonight at a press conference where he lectured foreign reporters on geography.
And this is the entire Arab world, and this is Israel.
Netanyahu insists the Israeli military has to stay in Gaza to seal the southern border against Hamas smuggling in weapons. But for Hamas, that's a non-starter. It insists on a full military withdrawal.
So people said, yeah, but if you stay, this will kill the deal. And I say, such a deal will kill us.
President Biden said you were not doing enough to reach a hostage deal. How do you interpret that, and what's your response?
I think I've already answered that. I'm just talking about the facts. We've achieved the release of more than half the hostages, and a lot more than half of the living hostages.
Netanyahu made it clear that, in his view, he's doing plenty.
I'm committed to getting them out, all of them, all of them.
But as long as he refuses to budge on withdrawing Israel's military from the border, there will be no hostage release, and there will be more tragedies like this one. 9-year-old Tala Abu Ajwan, still wearing her beloved roller skates, was killed by shrapnel yesterday after an Israeli airstrike in central Gaza.
And the prospect of any ceasefire deal right now, Nora, is looking very remote.
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. Well, tonight, torrential rain is causing a flash flooding across parts of the Gulf Coast. Rising floodwaters near San Angelo, Texas, trapped a family, including a 3-year-old, after their car was washed off the road. They were clinging to a tree when first responders pulled them to safety. Another half foot of rain is expected by the end of the week. That's from Corpus Christi to Mobile, Alabama. On the West Coast, heat alerts are in effect for 55 million Americans with record-breaking temperatures. Tonight, there are new questions about what would be the largest grocery store merger in U.S. history. The CEOs of 2 major chains testified today at a trial defending Kroger's nearly $25 billion purchase of Albertsons. Federal regulators are trying to block the deal, saying it could hurt shoppers. Here's CBS's Jolene Kent.
The prices you pay at the grocery store are now under scrutiny in federal court.
Nothing has gone down. It's all going up.
Things that you used to buy, like eggs, it's just gotten really expensive.
Today, the CEOs of grocery chains Kroger and Albertsons defended a proposed $25 billion merger under oath, saying the combined chains would be better positioned to compete with Walmart and Amazon. Kroger CEO Rodney McMullen promising in court, the day that we merge is the day that we will begin lowering prices, vowing that the combined company would invest $1 billion to lower prices if the merger goes through. The Federal Trade Commission has sued to halt this merger, alleging it would raise prices by reducing competition in some areas of the country.
Is that an accurate argument?
I'm not convinced of that argument. So if they're somehow able to combine their stores, some of those cost savings through lower wholesale prices could be passed on to consumers.
The two chains combined operate about 5,000 stores. Currently, Walmart dominates the grocery market by dollars spent, as shoppers have faced stubborn inflation since the pandemic. Since 2019, according to the CBS Money Watch price tracker, a dozen eggs more than doubled. Bread jumped 54% and chicken 33%. But wages have also risen 23%, keeping pace with overall prices.
But that's not how a lot of consumers think. They just see that grocery bill at the end and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. And they're right.
Now, earlier in this hearing, a Kroger senior director did admit the grocery giant had raised prices for eggs and milk beyond inflation levels for a period of time. But since then, the CEO of Kroger has insisted that prices would come down if the chains merge. Nora?
Everyone watching that very closely. Jolene Kent, thank you so much. America Decides, the issues, the economic plan for Vice President Kamala Harris hopes will win over small business owners. That's next. Now to America Decides, and a topic voters consistently say is one of their top issues, the economy. Vice President Kamala Harris today unveiling new pieces of her economic policy. The Democratic nominee is breaking with President Joe Biden on capital gains tax, saying rich Americans should pay a lower rate than what her boss suggests. CBS's Ed O'Keefe in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with Harris's new pitch to small business owners.
On November 5th, we will save our economy.
The fight for the middle class is on.
It's essentially a tax cut for starting a small business.
At a local brewery in New Hampshire, Vice President Harris today served up an idea that would allow new small businesses a chance to write off $50,000 in startup costs, up from the current $5,000.
We will, and this is very important, cut the red tape that can make starting and growing a small business more difficult than it needs to be.
Harris is setting a goal of 25 million new small business applications in her first term, more than during the Biden or Trump years. Portsmouth frame store owner Wendy Clement, an independent voter, is a fan of another piece of Harris's plan, a new standard tax deduction for small businesses.
Saving paperwork is fantastic, but even the deduction, we always put money back into the business. I mean, that's usually what a lot of the small businesses do, so that would help us to reinvest in our business.
Harris today also proposed new interest-free loans for small companies. Clement has 7 employees and recently expanded into a neighboring building. Those loans could help.
Interest rates are high, so we're paying quite a bit back in interest, and I could put that towards employees, I could put that towards lighting.
But former President Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance blasted Harris's new ideas.
If she thinks they were going to do a lot of good, she should try them out now because she's currently in power.
Trump has promised to lower prices and boost economic growth, but hasn't directly appealed to small businesses. He'd end taxes on tips and Social Security benefits and wants to cut the corporate tax rate to 15%.
We're going for a tax cut. You know, we gave you the biggest tax cut in history.
Harris today said she would pay for her plans by boosting taxes on the wealthy and large corporations. They would require congressional approval. As for next week's debate between Harris and Trump, the Harris team now says it has agreed a microphone will be muted when the other candidate is speaking. That had been a key detail in the lead up to the debate. Nora?
The news on Mike Gate. All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you. Eye on America is next. Meet the man who turned evangelical Christians into true believers in Donald Trump. We are continuing our look at Donald Trump's relationship with evangelical Christians. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Major Garrett has an interview with a man who doesn't talk to reporters often, a self-described Christian nationalist. He sees Trump's movement as more than defeating Democrats.
You can't make America great again until you restore an awakening with God again.
Under a massive circus tent in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Lance Wallnau is the ringleader, preaching Christian nationalism and political activism to a rapturous following.
Unless you learn how to mobilize and how to move in at a local level, then you're letting the devil dominate your culture.
Wallnau is a business consultant and firebrand influencer in the growing Christian nationalist movement, reaching millions of believers across his platforms. He views Trump as a once-in-a-thousand-years figure, flawed, yet divinely chosen to navigate chaotic times.
I caught that idea in 2015 when I first met Trump, and I got a lot of pushback after he got elected, because they were searching around for how could the evangelicals justify voting for some, barbaric character like Trump, and they're hypocrites that they are.
Wallnau admits that Trump, twice divorced and roundly accused of other moral failings, does not align with traditional evangelical expectations.
I said, listen, give the guy some time. He doesn't know who we are, but his values resonate with our community. God's raising up an outsider. If at the end of the day we haven't activated you to either be a poll watcher, a poll worker, somebody involved with election integrity, or somebody that can help someone else get out a vote, I'm not sure that we've done what we have to do.
What I watched today, was that about spiritual revival or political activism?
That's a combination platter. It's about spiritual activism.
Can an energized Christian sit out this election?
I don't see how anyone with moral clarity sits out an election like this. I mean, the issues are so clear. And I tell Christians, I say, you know what would you say during the Civil War?
The terminology at Wallnau's revivals is apocalyptic.
It's not us that's dangerous, it's them.
Describing a spiritual battle between pious believers and demons who speak through Democrats or liberals.
It's not just a person, it's a spiritual force.
Demonic or?
Yeah, demonic, yeah. They can influence people with bodies.
They believe that it was a demonic conspiracy that stole the 2020 election.
Religious scholar Matthew Taylor has made a careful study of Wallnau and others in the charismatic Christian movement.
So they're using the experiences of charismatic spirituality to galvanize Christians politically and saying, now you've had these experiences, now we need to go and use that to change our country.
Wallnau rarely grants interviews, but is willing to describe, as he sees it, the forces arrayed against Trump.
He's virtually up against academia, media, government, the intelligence communities, and to an extent, a whole lot of corporate businesses.
He believes hyper-focused Christian political energy can overcome those perceived obstacles.
The tendency to just look at elections, pray about them, eat popcorn, watch the result, and then go to bed is over. Christians as believers probably should be engaged in this process of shaping culture far more aggressively and intentionally from now on.
As for their impact on the election, God only knows. For Eye on America, I'm Major Garrett in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
NBA legend Charles Barkley gives the biggest assist of his life with a major donation. That's next.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Breasttree. Visit us at breasttree.com.
NBA Hall of Famer and sports commentator Charles Barkley knows how to deliver both on and off the court. Barkley gave the first part of a $1 million donation to St. Mary's Academy. That's a Catholic college prep school for young women in New Orleans. He made the pledge after watching a 60 Minutes report about two former students who used trigonometry to solve the 2,000-year-old math problem, the Pythagorean theorem, once deemed impossible. Pamela Rogers is president of St. Mary's Academy.
We believe that the donation will be transformational for our students. We think it will bring us to a new level of sustainability.
The Charles Barkley Foundation says Mr. Barkley is very focused on transforming future generations through education and opportunities. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. Ending on a high note, I'm Norah O'Donnell. Good night.